Welcome to Coffee and the Bull.
Right? Because he's like, man, I grew up in the country. I know how to run a chainsaw.
Right.
And I'm saying this I grew up in the country. I grew up in Alabama, Mississippi. Spent
Right.
most of my life in Louisiana, doing everything that I need to do. I'm about as redneck as you can get, right? So I've got friends who are from California, who, bless their hearts, they would be willing to do anything that I ask them to do. They're going to admit they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
Like one of them, she come to work with me and she was helping. We were doing a privacy fence. She couldn't figure out the word nail gun to save her life, but she called it up. I knew when you say, "Hey, can I borrow the?" You don't know how to run the, and so
You still let her though, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. But it was when you can approach something knowing that the person you're with does not have that skill set, you know how to go on from there. Well, the issue with good old country boys is we lie a lot,
Right, and we don't admit that we don't know what we're doing
because it's a sign of weakness or whatever.
Right.
And so before I hired Guy, about a year prior to hiring Guy, like we did hurricane. We had a hurricane hit the area, and so
Right.
we had trees down everywhere. And so me and my brother-in-law, we had spent right at, I want to say, 6 weeks just nonstop. He was running a skid steer, I was running a saw, and I'm talking about we cut so many trees up. And I did that without the first bit of PPE, personal protective equipment.
Right.
Did not have the face mask. Didn't have I had earbuds in because that way I could listen to my music. They were semi noise canceling. But I had a pair. It was a pair of Under Armour shoes that I didn't have to wear socks on. Socks
so
with.
Nasty.
It was. They were meant to allow water to come in and out. Like they were designed that way. Because we were also walking, where you had standing water and stuff like that. Like it wasn't uncommon. That being said, for anybody who's judging me right now, if you've ever been in a hurricane damaged area where it's significant damage, you don't always get to wash clothes and all this other stuff. So I'm khaki shorts, a t-shirt, and shoes with no socks. That is what I'm cutting trees on. So every day I got sawdust everywhere. And
It's so nasty because I know that you don't wear socks as often as possible.
Right, I hate wearing socks. But anyway, so that was my mindset is, hey, we did this. We didn't have a problem. If you know what you're doing, granted, people make mistakes. That
Things
being said,
happen.
I am
Yep.
not advocating before anybody calls us and sends hate mail. I'm not advocating to not have the proper protective equipment running a chainsaw.
No. We don't get any mail. He's advocating that.
I'm just saying what I did, And I'm not saying it was the smartest thing. I never claimed to be a smart guy.
It makes me laugh because I've never one time in my life ever worn any of the things that you're talking about.
I know. You don't do it. Your uncle and your dad and everybody,
Nope.
they've always wore. At best, they might have sunglasses on. They're not going to be safety glass rated. It's going to be your regular sunglasses and blue jeans.
Like as a
because
kid,
blue jeans stop chainsaws evidently.
As a kid, my daddy used to send my two older brothers up the trees, and I'm talking 30, 40 feet up in the air without ropes, without anything, and a hand bow saw,
Right.
just
Get
to
after
cut
it,
the top off and tie the rope off so he could pull it with his pickup when we cut it at the base. Like,
So, man, we took in. So that's kind of how I did it, And again, I'm not advocating if you don't know what you're doing with a chainsaw, please do not go cut your arm off,
Right, yeah.
and then think you're about to sue Coffee and Bull because we do not have
No.
the funds for that.
No.
Anyway, so that was my mindset. Was hey, look, never had an issue. However, I was also trying to be a good business owner. I
Right.
feel like if I'm going to hire you and pay you to do a job, I should give you the things you need to do that job.
Fair.
So I went and bought the face mask. I bought I had walkie-talkie earbuds that they were noise canceling, so you could hear us talking, and if I was on one of the machines across the property, we could still talk to each other because I had a microphone on it, but you couldn't hear the saw and things like that.
Right.
It was certain decibels. So I bought those chainsaw chaps. Put on some chainsaw chaps. So I give them a brand new out of the box, still got the creases on them chainsaw chaps, right? And I give him a saw, and hey, you know how to run this? Yeah. I've done this plenty of times. So takes, and he goes. I go do what I'm start working on some stumps or whatever it was I was doing, and I look up, 15 minutes into it, and he has got the saw sitting on a thing, and he's pulling these threads out, and I'm like, you shouldn't have threads in the chainsaw, you know.
Right.
And so I go over there, and he had gotten lazy, and he was cutting it, and he set the saw down on his leg, and it hit the chaps. I'm like, how in the hell do you in 15 minutes mess up, you know, whatever. I get it, mistakes happen. We'll clean, we fixed it, got everything good to go. And so I honestly, I battled with it. I was like, do I get him a new set of chaps, or do I just let him wear those because the other leg's good, you know? But then I also realized that statistically he hit that spot, and it might be his go-to spot. And so next day I get him another pair of chaps, right? Give them to him, and give him a saw. Hey, you know what you're doing, right? Yeah. I've done this plenty of times. Walk away. I didn't even get across the property. I turned and looked, and he had done it again because I heard his saw stop. So I turned and looked, and he had hit the exact same spot, doing the exact same thing. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, all right, obviously you don't know what the hell you're doing, you know? Right. And so I wound up taking the saw from him. Hey, you're not cutting anything else anymore, you know? Like I had to find other stuff for him to do, and it was because he was not the most truthful with his skill set, but also at the same time, sometimes you got to step in and say, hey, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. You know, sometimes you got to be the guy to be like, hey, your AC's in upside down, dummy. You know, hey, stop trying to cut your leg off with your chainsaw chaps.
Right.
You know, and that's kind of a hard spot to be in when you're the one that you're trying to do something, you don't have that skill in, you know, that you're trying to do. And what I mean by that is, for me, that transitioned over into me as a business owner. I thought, you know, hey, I was squared away and everything, and it took me losing money on jobs for about 8 months in a row, where it was like, all right, I'm not by no means am I Donald Trump, so maybe I should step away from this realm. And that's what honestly was one of the driving forces for me to get back in law enforcement was, hey, this isn't working out. Don't be the guy blaming the economy, or you can't get people to work no more, and all, you know, not trying to be that guy. Is hey, this isn't you right now. This isn't, you know, it's not making it. You got to find a way to step out. You know, and sometimes you got to. It's a rough spot to be in, but sometimes you got to be willing to take that step.
So, I had something similar, but not really. It's how I got into law enforcement. Was I was working at a dealership for motorcycles, and I was a mechanic in the back, and I love working on motorcycles. They're easier than cars. I don't care what anybody says. The motor, everything is all right there in front of your face. You don't got to get into necessarily the weird positions like you do with a vehicle. Right, you don't got to crawl in and out, you know. And I was good. I loved working on them. And one day I had this guy. He had a bike that was well over $100,000. Very expensive bike. Right. And one of my most loyal customers, right? And one day he came in and he wanted airbags put into the bike. Well, airbags typically go in the saddlebags, and it's so you can lower and raise the bike. He wasn't very tall, and so he wanted.
I'm thinking, when you say airbags, I'm thinking like the little cars, you know, for like the old like Lincolns or whatever they put on bouncing and stuff like that. Like that's what I'm thinking of.
Surprisingly,
you know, and
no, you're right on the money.
That with a motorcycle.
You can. So what he wanted was this set, and the cylinders would go in the saddlebags. And I told him, I said, look, this is 100% a custom thing. I can do it. It's not cheap. Well, he wanted to save money. He went to somebody else, and then he came back and he said, look, bike is riding super weird. I keep getting a pull to the right. Can't figure it out. So I take the bike on a test ride. He's not lying. The bike feels heavier on the right. Turns out, dude had put both of the cylinders in one saddlebag instead of spreading and dispersing the weight out. Right. So I get the bike in the lift, and I'm tightening the wheel chock down. Well, what I didn't realize, he has custom rims, so I had put them in there with like a guard between the metal, so when it clamped down on the front wheel, it would not damage his rim. I didn't tighten it down enough, and I'd made that mistake. That's totally on me. Got the bike, as the lift is going up, the bike starts to lean towards me. So I stop what I'm doing, and I grab the bike. And when I did, I ended up hurting my back really bad. So I get the lift back down, I get the bike, I don't damage the bike at all, whatever, but my back's really messed up. So I go to the doctor, and they basically tell me 9 months to a year before I can do anything crazy with my back again. And I'm like, well, shit, how am I going to ride motorcycles, do whatever? So fast forward, I do about 8 months. They move me up to the parts counter.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the guys that I was working with, I'm not going to say his name, but
Guy. It's Guy.
Not same guy, but different guy.
Yeah, different.
He's stealing. He's stealing from every employee that works there. So in dealerships, especially Harley Davidson, if I sell something, I get a commission off of that. The manager above me gets a percentage of that commission because they can't be out there selling stuff.
Right.
That's how they kind of make a little bit of their money. Now, as a mechanic, I was making good money as a mechanic because you time it out right, you bill your hours correctly. I could, in a 8 to 10 hour day, I could bill 100 hours of labor, which is good money. Selling parts and accessories, you're not making that kind of money. You rely on that commission.
Right.
Well, I'd caught on to this guy going in behind people and changing the sale after they'd made their sale. He would go in and change the name to himself. And ironically was like the number 5 seller for all of Harley Davidson in the United States. Millions of dollars of sales because he was changing his name.
Nobody notice this? Like you don't notice, hey, I'm not getting the commission from selling this bike?
Right. And so what got me and how I knew that I was in the wrong line of work was I didn't say anything to the guy. I went in, spare time, downtime, whatever, because believe it or not, Harley dealerships are busy sometimes out of the day. Not every day, not all day. So I went in and I would print out after everybody would make a sale. Like I would go in and I told everybody but this dude. I was like, hey, when you make a sale, print the receipt with your name on it. And every receipt has a timestamp. And so I'd collected all this evidence, and I'd wait until I saw him do it again, and then I'd go in after he changed it, and I'd print it out, and I'd staple them together. And I had, like, a stack of evidence. Like, I had done all of this work. And, like, time-stamped it myself when he went into the computer and did it so that the camera would pick him up doing it. And I took it to the manager, and I was like, hey, because like 2 days before this had happened, he came out and was like, oh, this guy just made, top 5 seller of Harley Davidson throughout the whole U.S., and he works here, and that's great, blah, blah, blah. So I went in and I was like, he's a thief, and he's stealing from everybody. And I was told that I'm not doing my job effectively or efficiently if I'm focused on him doing what he's doing. And I was like, what?
Right.
He's a thief, and I'm in the wrong. And, like, it blew my mind. And about 30 minutes later, a couple of guys from the agency we worked at, they came in to buy their stuff for their motorcycles. And this guy was mad. He was mad. Because I'd made on that sale probably $4,000 in commission. Because they bought brand new motorcycles. They bought brand new parts to swap out on those bikes and everything else. And I kind of vented to one of those guys, and he was like, well, sheriff's office is hiring. And I was like, no, I applied at this local PD, and I've applied 3 years in a row. They've never taken me, whatever. And he goes, I promise, they'll take you. And I was like, all right, no joke. I went in, I applied at the sheriff's office, I applied at that local PD, and within 24 hours, if not less, I had a phone call from the sheriff's office versus the PD. Now, to the PD's credit, they did call me back after, like 2 days after I'd gotten hired by that sheriff's office. And it dawned on me after I put all that together, I enjoyed doing that kind of detective work and everything else. Sales is not for me.
Right.
I can't sell dirt to a ditch
job
digger.
Out of college was sales.
Yeah.
And no, it's not for me.
I love talking to the people. I loved interacting and like hearing people's stories or whatever and stuff like that. But I'm not good at selling people things. Like I don't have that skill set. I just don't. I'm very cut and dry on certain aspects. And guys would come in
especially like when you look at motorcycles. The last thing you want to do is, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to used car salesman, but like we had, Kenny was on here. He sells cars,
right?
And I'm not being disrespectful. That you can lie to somebody on a car
Right,
to get them
right.
to buy a car. Oh yeah, this will be great for you, and,
Oh,
and it
yeah.
may be more car than they need or less car than what they need for their specific thing, and they'll get over it. Like, it's not the end of the world.
Right, right.
Most vehicles drive the same. Like, you might have a little bit bigger note than you anticipated, or maybe somewhere somebody got a better deal on their car than I don't know.
Right, right,
But I
right.
doubt it. Anyway, but with a motorcycle, man, you can't really take that same sales approach of,
No.
hey, just get the sale no matter what.
Right.
Because you could have somebody wrapped around a tree by the end of,
Yeah, yeah.
before they make it home.
And the thing about like parts and being a mechanic and everything else, and it was one of the things I hate about that specific dealership that I worked at was it was all about money. There was never a care for the car. I used to get in trouble because, for a brake fluid flush, you're charging a customer anywhere between $140 to $160 to flush their brakes. I don't want to blow anybody's mind, but you're charging them for 2 bottles of brake fluid. It doesn't take 1 bottle of brake fluid to do the front and the back.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. But they want you to charge a bottle for the front and a bottle for the rear. And I would have a customer come in and they would, I'd see the brake fluid and I'd be like, hey man, look, this is low or this is bad. Like, you need to flush this out. And they would tell me straight up, like, bro, I can't afford that. Like, you're talking another $150, almost $200.
Right.
I can't afford that. And my thought process is, if you don't have brakes, you don't stop. If you don't stop, I don't have a customer. So I would flush it out, and I would just come out and be like, hey, look, don't worry about it. Took care of it. Just come back and see me if you need something else done. We'll work each other that way. And then customers love it. I had repeat customers all the time because of it, because I didn't screw them over, but I gave them a necessity.
You wasn't charging for the service.
Right. Like,
Yeah,
I was just like...
I mean, I kind of understand the business's anger at you is,
Right, but
we're doing all this for free now.
Right, but you're talking about a job that we had to charge them over an hour and a half for, right, for the labor. So you're looking at the $140 plus another $60 to $80 for labor.
I hope Harley watches this.
Let 'em.
They're like, I got you.
Good luck. But it would take me less than 20 minutes to bleed out the braids, front and back, put new fluid in it, and I had a repeat customer. Now, I'm not saying it should be free. I'm not saying anything like that, but when a customer comes in and they drop hundreds of dollars for a service or whatever they needed done, the least I could do is make sure that the motorcycle stopped. Like,
I mean, to be fair, it will eventually stop.
Right, and which is funny because it's never the acceleration or the speed that kills anybody. It's always the abrupt stopping that does it. But it was my realization that as much as I love to work on them and be a part of that community and ride, right, the sales and everything else, that didn't produce for me a satisfaction that law enforcement does. It doesn't give me the same resolve that this podcast does, where we don't get them often or every day, but we do get messages or comments or things like that where people are feeling as if we're helping them or relating to the scenarios and situations that they're going through, and that does something for me. That there's a inner richness.
Well, and that's kind of one of the things I enjoy about the podcast is, even though the numbers aren't skyrocketing, by no means are we viral.
Right.
We're not like some of the other promiscuous based podcasts that jump up because a young girl makes a funny statement or whatever.
Right. Or caddily dressed.
Right. So it's obviously we're not doing that, but we've had a lot of people come up to us and hey man, I really appreciate what y'all doing. And that has been very helpful,
right?
Or
Motivational,
very encouraging,
Yeah.
That it's like, okay, maybe there's something else that I can be doing or something like that.
So
I
the
really
in
enjoyed
public
that.
ones are the ones that always catch me off guard when somebody recognizes us in public. Thankfully, it's never happened at work. That I feel like that would be awkward, but definitely like the random people that say something or the messages that I randomly get from Facebook of people we don't know, just, hey, saw your podcast, like, I think it's awesome, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, hey, that's okay, stranger. Thanks.
Right.
Like, you don't really know how to respond, but you feel a certain way about it. And so, I don't know. I feel like there's a moment of clarity that everybody's got to get, that when you're stuck in the dead end job, and you and I had talked about it a little bit the other day about you get stuck in these dead end jobs where you're not going anywhere. You work a plant for 40 years, and at the end of it, what have you accomplished other than, retirement?
Right.
What are you going to do with your retirement? A lot of police officers, when they retire,